Hello, this is cjhoyle. If you're familiar with my YouTube channel, you may know that I like to spend my summer vacations doing self-supported bicycle tours through rural areas and camping along the way. For a variety of reasons, I've decided to attempt a different kind of vacation this summer. In recent years, I've become fascinated by the historic canals and waterways that exist here in my home province of Ontario. On previous bike tours, I've enjoyed stopping to watch boats go through the locks of both the Trent-Severn Waterway and the Rideau Canal. I've even spent evenings camping at some of the lock stations. The more that I've seen of these beautiful places, the more that I want to see of them. With each waterway having dozens of locks which are numbered in series, there's kind of a collectible nature about them, which has made me want to eventually go and visit every lock station in each series. However, as you can imagine, a bike isn't a great vehicle for exploring a waterway, since the roads don't usually follow the water very closely, and the ones that do tend to be fairly busy. A watercraft is a much better choice, and since I like vehicles that are human-powered, I had the idea that I could simply substitute my bicycle for a canoe or kayak and do a vacation much in the same style as I've enjoyed in the past. Camping is available at nearly every lock station, and some of these lock stations are situated in historic communities that I've never visited before. So with 2 weeks booked off at the end of the summer of 2020, I've decided to spend it paddling down the water rather than pedaling down the road. Since I'll be doing this trip solo, a kayak seemed like a logical choice since they're fast and easy to maneuver. However, this would have meant either buying or renting a kayak, which would have been logistically challenging, especially in 2020. I ultimately decided to use a canoe for my vacation, since my family already has one which is available for me to borrow. The next choice that I needed to make was on the location. The two waterways which interest me the most are the Trent-Severn Waterway and the Rideau Canal. I've decided on the Trent-Severn Waterway mostly because it's closer to home and therefore will be logistically easier. In a lot of ways, I'm approaching this trip like an experiment. Let me be the first to tell you that I'm certainly not an expert canoeist. I've been canoeing since I was very young, and I do get out for an overnight canoe trip with my extended family at least once a year, but the distance covered on those trips is quite insignificant compared to what I'm envisioning for this next trip. Not to mention that all the canoeing on my upcoming trip will be done solo, which is significantly more challenging since I won't have somebody else at the front of the canoe helping to propel it forward while I battle the wind and the waves keeping it steered in the right direction. Prior to 2020, I've only ever solo paddled in a canoe for very short distances, and never in strong winds. Another factor to keep in mind is that I have a history of hand and wrist pain, which I believe is caused by pinched nerves. In the past, this was triggered by consecutive days of long-distance bike riding, and is ultimately the reason I switched to riding a recumbent bike a number of years ago. Up to this point, that pain has never manifested itself while paddling a canoe, but if the amount of hours I spend paddling each day is high enough, it's hard to know for sure that it won't cause me some kind of problem. Having already learned my lesson with this injury once the hard way, I have to be prepared to pull the plug on my trip at any point if the pain emerges. On that note, in addition to having a nice canoe to borrow for the trip, I'm also extremely fortunate to have my amazing parents agreeing to act as my personal shuttle service and remote support team. They'll deliver me to my start point, pick me up at my end point, and will be on call should any emergencies arise along the way. So the Trent-Severn Waterway spans a total distance of 386 kilometers from Port Severn to Trenton. Although I would love the accomplishment of paddling the entire thing, I really don't think this goal would be realistic for me in the time that I have available for this vacation. It also would involve paddling through 3 fairly large lakes where the waves could be pretty high on a windy day. I'm instead choosing this starting point here, just north of Beaverton, where the canal meets Lake Simcoe. Putting Lake Simcoe and Lake Couchiching behind me, I can paddle east through some of the most canoe-friendly portions of the system with an initial goal to making it as far as Peterborough. Another reason for choosing this as my starting point is that the summit, or home port of the Trent-Severn Waterway, is Kirkfield, which means that although this first section I'll be paddling upstream, the majority of my trip will be downhill in the same direction as the flow of the current. The blue and red circles on the map represent the lock stations. These are the locations where the locks exist, which are the mechanisms that raise and lower boats between the different levels of the canal. My initial thought had been that since I'll be traveling in a canoe, a watercraft which is designed to be easy to carry, I could just portage my gear in the canoe at each lock. After doing some research, however, I discovered that this might be pretty tricky, at least for a solo canoeist, since the docks at most lock stations are built pretty high above the water level. Also, the section I'll be paddling through features the iconic historic lift locks in Kirkfield and Peterborough, and it would be kind of a shame not to have the pleasure to experience these firsthand. So after discovering that the price for a log pass is actually quite reasonable, I decided to just go ahead and buy one for the trip. With a lock pass, each time I encounter a lock on the trip, I'll be able to go through it just like the boats do, and won't need to worry about loading or unloading my gear from the canoe every time. The locations where the locks are will also serve as my accommodations each night. The lock stations indicated in blue allow camping on a first-come, first-served basis to people who arrive by watercraft. The ones indicated in red, however, are not allowing camping in 2020, in most cases because there's currently ongoing construction near them. There are also some private campgrounds situated along the shores of some of these lakes, but in my research I found that most had decided to either stay closed for the 2020 pandemic summer or to only allow RV camping this year. So to keep things simple, I've planned my trip around exclusively camping at the lock stations shown in blue. Another advantage of lock station camping is that many of them are situated in the heart of small communities, giving me easy access to amenities, including grocery stores and restaurants. This means that just like on my bike trips, I won't need to carry a large supply of food, and I can enjoy local cuisine along the way, and in the process help to support the local businesses. As you can see, in some areas these blue circles are clustered close together, offering me some flexibility in how far I'll need to paddle each day. However, in other areas like the stretch from Bobcaygeon to Buckhorn, they're further apart, and I won't see a lock station for a full 28 kilometers. In fact, the reason I chose Peterborough as the initial destination that I'm shooting for is because once you go past Peterborough, the next lock station is another 60 kilometers away, and that one doesn't even allow camping. Essentially, there's an entire 85 kilometer stretch with no lock station camping available. That being said, if I make it as far as Peterborough with days of my vacation left and morale still high, perhaps I could ask my support team to shuttle me in the canoe past this section, and I could pick things back up and finish the rest of the waterway. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and keep things focused for now on my initial goal of Lake Simcoe to Peterborough. So I'm planning on filming videos sharing each day of my journey, and I hope you'll enjoy joining me on this unique adventure. Although this trip will be quite different from anything I've ever done before, I intend to keep the structure of these videos quite similar to what I've shared on my past bike tours. The trip will begin on Saturday, August 29th, 2020, but there'll be some delay before the videos from the trip are posted. But until then, I hope you've enjoyed this introduction to the trip. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this upcoming adventure, so please leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.